I've migrated over 10 applications from the traditional Android view system to full Compose, and in this video I'm gonna break down the exact step-by-step approach that I'm taking that tends to work every single time. We're gonna do this by looking into an old project of mine which is open source, and you can find a link to it in the description below. And in this project we have to migrate the views to Compose, we have to migrate some live data, we have to make the tests work, and also make the UI tests work with this migration. And instead of doing the actual coding, in this video we are just gonna go over each and every step that is important, and then you can analyze the actual commits by looking into that repository. Let's get into it. Now, before we approach the actual migration, we have to analyze the application and see what are the different aspects we need to keep in mind when doing the migration. So here is the application that we are going to migrate, and it is relatively small or maybe medium application. It's not that big. So here we have a screen where we can make an authorization or registration. It navigates to login and it goes back. So here I am actually using in-memory authentication service, so it is not reaching out to backend, so I can just do whatever to enter the application. And here the app shows a list of songs, and these songs I can enter to see the details. And I think this one had a little bit more of lyrics inside. So it just gives the name of the song, who's the performer, and what's the lyrics. Then I can edit this, of course, and this is different screen that I can save. So this little banner that is showing when you click on the save is also something that shows errors, but with different backgrounds. So green when success and red when failure. We have to keep that in mind. Then another thing is that here we can delete the song, but if I click delete, it shows here a little toast that I have to confirm. So I can confirm by clicking on delete, and then it brings me back to the song list. Another thing is the search. So we can maybe improve the search by having this search bar with a material tree. But yeah, I can type a query, click the button to see the results. And ultimately, I think we can add new. And yeah, if some fields are empty, also there is this error that is being shown, so we also have to do that. So in that sense, these fields, we have to make them before we start to something that's going to be reusable component that will be able to show errors and so on and so forth. Now, if I enter everything, it's gonna save the song and brings me back. Also, then I can log out. Now, the first thing that I'm gonna do is I will introduce compose dependencies, and I'm gonna approach adding the design system or migrate the design system. Now I'm going to add those compose dependencies, but instead of doing that on camera, as I said, we are directly going to jump the video there. All right, now I've got the dependencies integrated, and I've also added here activity compose, which is something that I don't need just yet. I'm gonna need it later. But here I just added these compose dependencies. You will find a commit in the history yourself, and you will see that basically I have added compose dependencies and made a bundle here for compose and compose debug. Then I've also added here the Kotlin serialization and commented out because I don't need it just yet. But yeah, it's gonna be easier for me to uncomment it later, and I'll need this when I'll work on the navigation with Compose. Another important aspect we need to take in consideration when analyzing is to see what are all the dependencies that we are using. So here we have safe arcs, which is used for the navigation between the fragments. That's something interesting. And then you can also take a look into the dependencies that are currently used. So as you can see, we are using fragments and so on and so forth. But then also, if I open the build Gradle of the application, we can see what actually this application is using. So here, for example, currently it is using view binding. I've added compose as part of this commit. And then I've also added here the compose bundle. And now that I have compose in place, I'm gonna approach migrating the theme, and the video will proceed from there. All right, now I have the theme in place. Here I just created a package where I have created color file where I just migrated all the colors that I used to have in the string resources. I didn't delete the string resources just yet. So an approach that I'm gonna talk about all this time is gonna be, before deleting something, introduce the new thing, then migrate all the users to the new thing, then delete the old thing. That's something that works always, regardless what sort of refactoring you are doing. So that's lesson number one. Then I have introduced a design system where I'm actually having app color scheme. I have typography, I have shape and size. And then here I have defined local static composition locals for all of those. And then I have also introduced the actual theme, where I have implementation of the design system for dark color scheme, light color scheme, some typography, not everything, so just a few of those, because probably as I go over the screens, I'll have to add some of the styles here in addition. Then the shapes, the sizes, and I have also introduced app theme, which is going to get those static composition locals through. And I have also created a convenience object that I can access my color scheme, typography, shape, and size through it. Now, as I said, try to stay minimalistic, so don't overdo everything that you need right away or everything that the project has right away. So start somewhere, like what I did here, and then you can build on top. So these are already things that were in the theme, in the XML. So I just did it, but I also could have done them gradually as I'm working on the UI. The important thing is to actually have this in place, like these labels that I'm having. And then as I have a need, I'm gonna add one more. Now that I have the theme in place, next up would be introducing common reusable components that I will need across the application. And again, I don't need to introduce all of those, but some of the things that I saw during the analyzing of the application. So for example, these text inputs, maybe some buttons, so I can start there and then add gradually as I go. But yeah, to begin somewhere, I'm just gonna add those common things that I will need. And then once I do that, I'll proceed the video from there. Okay, now I've got some common composables introduced here. Let's get started with the buttons to see what I've done here. And one of the important aspects whenever you are working with Compose is to introduce previews all the time. And that helps regardless when you are going to work on this code base again, or whoever is going to work after you, to see what happens there, and actually it will make it much easier for them. So here I have a primary button. Actually, it's just one composable here. I have a preview for it, and this primary button is just what we see here on the right hand side. And it has two states. One is when the button is just active, so we can click on it. And another one is when it shows sort of some progress, which is this circular progress indicator. And that's it, basically. Very simple component. That's something that I can reuse over time and just good enough to get started. Then the error banner, and for the error banner and the info, that's going to be something that you will take as a homework. What I've done here, I separate this in two files, but it could be one file that's going to be error banner and info banner, because both implementations are exactly the same, except the background here is different and the text color, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe the text color is even the same. So the only difference here between these two is the background. I did this on purpose so that I have some homework for you, and then you're going to tell me in the comments what was the approach that you take to consolidate this into a single file, or potentially even a single function. Now, that's about those two. As you can see, they are very, or actually the same. Next would be the overflow menu. So this is the overflow menu is a component that we saw on the top bar of the application. If I bring it back, so here, if I go on this button, so this is the overflow menu. So the entire component is this one. So it just has an icon button that shows that 3 dots vertical icon. And then when we click, we activate a drop-down menu that has an action that we can pass through as a label. Now, this is just enough for the needs of the application currently, but the question is, what if I need to make this overflow menu support multiple actions? And what if I want to add icons for those actions? So that's something that you can comment below and tell me what's going to be the approach that you will take, so they can see if that's going to be something that I would do as well. Now, in addition to the homework that I mentioned before, it would be if you can also add previews for the overflow menu and these info banners. I didn't do that on purpose, so that you have something interesting to work with. Finally, let's move to the text inputs. Here we have different text inputs that we're going to need across the application. As we can see from the preview, we have different variations of these text inputs. So here I have single line text input and multi-line text input that are sharing this core text input, which is a private composable function inside here. And then also have a password input that hides the input itself and also has this toggle on the right that will toggle between visible and invisible. And also have, as I mentioned, this multi-line text input where we can enter more than single line of text. And these are also just enough to get started for the song editing and also for the authorization, username and password. So now that I have also these composables that I can reuse, I can start approaching changing the screens themselves. Now the first step and the first lesson in this entire migration would be we always want to start from the top to the bottom, meaning that as you saw, we started at the top to define the dependencies, then we defined the themes and now also some reusable components, and then we start actually with the UI. So we can take some starting point like a fragment, and then we can port this UI of the fragment to compose. And then when we have this compose UI, we can flip the UI of the current fragment with a composable and keep the fragments but use compose. Then at some point we're going to have all the UI from all the fragments ported to compose, so the fragments are going to be used only for the navigation. And at that point we are going to consolidate or remove all the fragments and consolidate all these composables into a navigation file. So we're going to see how to do that. But first of all, we have to pick a starting point. A good candidate to get started would be this adding song fragment. And if we take a look into the fragment itself, we have a view model that this fragment is using, and it has its layout. It uses view binding, as we can see. Here is the layout. And additionally, we have menu provider for the menu items, like when something is done, as we can see, song editor menu. So when done, we are triggering the save of the song. And additionally, it also observes live data to apply whatever state comes from the view model to the UI. Now I can start working on the composable screen to make the UI of this fragment to compose, but as a prerequisite, I had to make the view model fragment actually compliant with the new UI that I'm going to be building. And in that sense, what I've done already is this view model was having live data, but I also made UI state in form of a state flow, which is one of the things that I wanted in general to make migration to. And I have introduced this UI state and also new song screen state, which is going to be the state that I will use for compose. Now, how did I know all of these things that I have to support in the state? You don't have to know all of them. Obviously, as you work on the UI, you can figure them out, but I had tests in place. So as you will see in the commits, when I was porting this, I actually utilized the tests and I wrote new tests to make this one work, or to cover all the functionality that I need. For example, updating the song title or updating the performer name, and those things had to be done, and they are used now from the tests. And when I call this, for example, it has to update the state itself, or it was an error before, to remove the error, and so on and so forth. So that's all covered in the tests. And now that I have this view model supporting the UI that I'm going to build, I can start approaching the UI and build it, but instead of building it in front of the camera as I said, I'm gonna do that and then the video will continue from there. All right, at this point I have introduced this new song screen and we can look into it right now. So it is still not being used, but the screen itself, what it does is it injects the view model that we already had, and it can navigate up, and it has an event when the song is saved. So this is very important when you are approaching this migration, because the fragment itself already does something. So when we do the analysis here, when something is like, let's take a look here. This is what I'm looking for. So when the song is saved successfully, we are navigating somewhere. But also from this fragment, naturally, in the traditional view system, we can navigate back, which means this fragment will go back. And to do that from compose as well, I have to expose those two navigation events. So what I'm trying to do and to say here is that I want to decouple the navigation events from the actual compose. So in compose, I'm going to expose these events, like when song is saved, or when I have to navigate up, or when a song is deleted, as we're going to see later. And when that's done, the caller of this screen will have to decide what to do. So the navigation will remain in the fragment, and from compose I'm also exposing events. So what happens here is that I am having just a basic screen that has those three text inputs. So the text for the name of the song, for the singer, and for the lyrics. And then we have this OK or done action on the top that we can click to save the song. So everything is done internally because we are having this view model. So the view model can save the song, and when the song is saved, we are observing that event, we say on song saved. So now the only thing that is left is to glue this UI in the fragment. So let's do that next. All right, I've done the gluing, and as we can see here, the menu provider is no longer being used. And here in onCreate view, I'm returning compose view where I'm applying set content, I'm applying my theme, and I'm just calling my new song screen. Then there are, as we saw, two events. On navigate up, I'm just navigating up by calling the activity on support navigate up. And then on song saved, I'm calling a function that was already here that will use this info view model to show a success message, and then it will navigate up. So this info view model is a shared view model that is being observed in the activity, and the activity shows this info banner. And we are going to see how we are going to port that later on. But for now, I just call that function and everything else basically becomes unused. Now that I have this glued, I can run the application and see how does it work. All right, I got the application loaded. And now here, when I click on this plus button, we should open that new screen, which is this one. And now as we can see, one issue is that we are having shared toolbar inside the activity that is working with all the fragments. That's something that we'll have to hide when opening this screen. We'll see how to do that just in a bit. And then here I can add songs basically. And what happens if I have empty field? If I try to save, it shows that error. And if I just insert whatever, click save, it goes back, and then I can find whatever I have added. So this functionality works already, and I ported one of the screens to compose. Not fully because of this toolbar, but the functionality is there. So as a next step, it would be to clean this up, to actually hide this toolbar, and then also remove all the unused and obsolete code. All right, I've done the cleanup, and I'm gonna walk you through it. And I actually split it in two commits, one for cleaning up the UI and the obsolete code, and also another one to clean up the view model and the tests. But I'm gonna walk you through both of them at once. So let's look into that. Now the new song fragment only has that info view model for that success message that we saw before. And that's something that we're gonna port later, but everything else is just removed here. And only we are calling the new song screen, and this fragment became way simpler. And also this is one step away from actually removing it, which is something that we'll do a bit later. Now, additionally, I wanted to show in the view model that we have gotten rid of the live data, and all we have here is now our compose related code and the mapping from the state that was already coming from the lower levels, like the repository, to composable state, or to the state that we are using into compose. And now all these little functions, I think they are easy to understand, to see what they are doing. And yeah, so that was basically one full cycle for one of the fragments. Now we have to move to another one and another one. And of course, I'm gonna now speed up a little bit because we're gonna be doing the same work for the rest of the fragments. For example, for the details, the edit, the login, and so on and so forth. But I'm gonna stop at important points where I have to give some advice on things that you may need to look into. Yeah, we're gonna speed up the process to make this shorter. One last thing that I had to do is the hiding of the toolbar in the main activity when we are opening this new fragment now. And as we can see here, I have introduced this setup toolbar visibility based on destination. And then I check here if the destination is new song, then I'm hiding it. And now I'm going to rerun the application, and we can see how that looks like. And then we can repeat the cycle for another fragment that we're going to pick up. Here we go, the application loaded. Now, if I click here on the add button, as we can see, the toolbar is getting hidden, and we are using the toolbar or seeing the toolbar that is in the composable screen. If I go back, it comes back as well. Now, that's cool. Now let's actually focus on this overview, which is in this package, is this overview package, songs overview fragment. So we're gonna work on that next. What's important or interesting here in this fragment is the search, which is something that I would like to improve as well. And yeah, let's focus on that next and see how that's gonna go. As we learned from the previous cycle. First, we are going to work on the view model and adapt the view model with a new state object that we can use for this fragment. And when we have the view model and the new state, we are going to introduce the composable screen, and we can do the replacement, so on and so forth. So step number one, let's adapt the view model. All right, I've introduced songs overview screen state, which has a few properties like is loading, songs, search query, and some error states. And I have also adapted the view model to work with this new state. It exposes UI state in a form of a state flow, and I also keep the live data as it used to be, because right now it still needs to remain working. And I have also introduced, again, by using the tests, I have introduced additional functionality that I'll need to alter the state as the things are going, like when the songs are loading and so on and so forth. And now that I have all this work done, I can introduce the composable screen. Now I got the composable screen completed, and it just isn't being used. And here we can see a preview of it. I had to add some additional labels in my theme for this button and also for the empty states. Hopefully it is visible on the screen right now. So these are this label and also the label on the button. I had to add additional things in the theme, but the rest of the implementation went pretty well. I have added the search as well here, and the search is always going to be accessible, so I don't have to click a button to expand it. I can directly start searching, and that's something that we'll have to also tune a little bit when updating the UI tests later on, as we'll see. But yeah, in general, this is complete, and you'll see all the work that I've done into implementing this in the commits if you are looking in the commit history. But I'm not gonna bother going through all these details, because there wasn't anything that was like a pain point or anything that was out of a regular work. And now that I have this screen ready in Compose, I'm gonna go ahead and replace the UI in the fragment with this composable screen. Right, now I've done that replacement. As we can see, the things are becoming unused now, like the menu provider, the user preferences view model, and so on and so forth. But again, I just commented out things and introduce here a composable that is loading the screen. This screen is exposing three things, like what happens when we click on add new song, we have to navigate somewhere, what happens when I log out, and what happens when I open a song to open the details. And that navigation actually is happening inside the fragment itself, and this screen is only exposing those events. And what's left is to clean up everything that is now no longer needed or used, like the songs adapter, for example, which was adapter for a recycler view, and so on and so forth. And also I have to hide the toolbar, the shared toolbar, in the main activity. So let's do that, and then we're gonna run the application to see how does it look like. All right, I've done the cleanup now. As you can see, this fragment also became way simpler compared to what it used to be. It has only those three functions to actually do the navigation. And in a main activity, I also added here that fragment to be part of the fragments or the destinations that are going to hide the toolbar. So here I converted that into a when, and for new song and song overview, now it is going to hide. And as I'm replacing one after another the fragments, I'll just add those destinations here. That's it. I also made a cleanup for the view model itself. So if you take a look here in the songs view model, no longer live data, only UI state in a form of state flow, where we are using the songs overview screen state that we saw before. And we just have two functions, which is fetching song and performing the search. That's all about it. Pretty straightforward and very simple. And let's see how this looks like now. All right, the application loaded. As we can see, it looks pretty nice. And from this overview now, I can go to the song details and go back. You can see how this hiding and showing of the toolbar is happening. Then I can also perform some search, but take a look how nicer now the search is with Compose. So I can search for something like tears here, and as we can see, that works. I can still open the song details, go back, and yeah, so I really love this transition basically. And also what else I can do is I can log out. So all the navigation points from that overview are working. So going to details, going back, going to add new song, going back, and also the logout as we saw. Next up, we are going to work on the song details, actually this screen here. So we are gonna repeat the same cycle, but instead of going through each and every bit, I am actually gonna skip a little bit more now and directly show you the results of that work. All right, we've got the work for the song details completed. There are a few aspects that I want to mention here because I find them important. So here for the main activity, I've added the song details destination to hide the toolbar. And here in the song details, I've replaced the UI with a composable screen. But here we have some interesting stuff, which is when we open the details, we can edit a song directly from there, meaning that we can navigate to edit song. And in that sense, we are getting the argument, the song ID that we have to pass to the other destination. So for this purpose, something interesting is that when we pass arguments, regardless whether it is compose navigation or the previous navigation that we have, we can get those arguments directly in the view model. And I'm going to show you how to do that, but something that I wanted to mention is that now the arguments are going to be loaded directly in the view models instead of getting them in the fragment itself and then passing them somewhere else. Now that's one. Another thing is if I open the song details screen here, we're using this song details view model, which is also reused in the editing. So the edit song fragment, which is here, also needed to take some changes before I approach working on this. And that change is this one. Basically, before we had live data and now we have state flow, and I had to adapt this function to use the state flow before I can work on this one. So that's another interesting point. You can find out in the commits the actual things or the actual changes that I had to make, but basically just replacement of the live data with state flow here. So that's yet another thing. And then in the composable itself, the song details, there are some things that I wanted to share. The first one is the snack bar, because in the details we can delete a song. And when attempting to delete, we want to show a snack bar that we have to confirm the deletion of the song itself. You can see how that is implemented here. An additional thing is what I'm seeing usually in Compose code bases is that this screen here, all this data is being present, it has to be scrollable. So when this is scrollable and we don't have a lazy column, in this case, I'm just using a column, I just remember scroll state and I'm passing that through the modifier. Now here is a trick. Most of the time, what I'm seeing is that they call fill max state, then add padding, and then add the vertical scroll. The problem is that the order of the modifier matters a lot. So when we are using that order, when the padding is first, then the vertical scroll, the scrolling doesn't look like as if it goes underneath the toolbar, but it actually cuts off as it is now. So let me run the application and then I'm gonna be able to demonstrate what I mean by that. And as I said, all the work about the song details was done. And now when I open something in details, it uses the new screen that I just built. And in terms of the scroll that I was saying is that when I start to scroll, as you can see, this content goes underneath the toolbar itself. So it is not cutting off. But if I change the modifier here from this to this and try to run, you'll see that subtle, I wouldn't say it is a bug, but it's weird behavior of the scroll and it doesn't look very nice. So let me open it. And if I scroll, you see it is scrolling with that cut here. And that's not very nice. So that's why when you are using the modifier, keep in mind the order, especially when you are doing this scrolling stuff. And now that we have the song details done, we're gonna move on to editing the song editor, which is basically going to complete the work for the fragments that are inside the application. And then what's gonna be left would be the sign up and the login. And so let me do the editing off camera. All right, now the editing is complete. Let me show you how does that look like. So if I open a song into details, then I can click on the edit button and that navigates to the editing. Now I can basically update here something, click on done, and it updates automatically. If I go back, it is updated as well. Now there are a few aspects that I want to mention here that I figured while doing the editing. The first one is that I found a bug when editing the song. So basically it was possible here to remove something that is here in this field and click save, and then it was not making an error, but it would actually take that change and save. So that was a bug that I discovered when porting the view model, and that's actually documented in the commits. You will figure it out when analyzing the commits, and now it works properly. Another thing is passing the arguments. So I want to actually spend a little bit of time here explaining how that works. So if I open this update song view model, what happens now is that the view model itself takes state handle as argument. And that's something that Coin or Hilt, whatever you use, we use Coin here, is going to be able to inject for you. You don't have to care about that. And so when we are navigating, as I mentioned before, regardless which navigation library you are using, is it the fragment navigation, is it compose navigation, it automatically passes the arguments of that destination into the save state handle. So then by using the save state handle, we can unpack or load those arguments that are being passed and use them directly in the view model. So we don't have to bother the UI with anything like arguments. They are coming in the save state handle automatically for us. So here, for example, I have a fragment, this edit song. When navigating to edit song, the song details is passing the song ID as an argument. As you can see here, I am not looking into anything, like I'm not loading those arguments here. So if I open the details here, when I click on edit song, I create a direction where I am passing the song ID and then I navigate. And then the edit song does not look into those arguments at all. Rather, in the view model itself, I'm directly going to get the song ID as an argument in the save state handle. And basically, if the name of the argument is song ID, then in the view model, in the save state handle, I can get it by that very same name. So all we need to do is just match on a name. And then I can use that argument here inside. So here I made a little extension on the save state handle to convert that into edit song args. This is still a type that is automatically generated with the save type args plugin, but that's something that we can also migrate when we'll remove all the fragments and make the navigation in Compose. We'll see how to do that just in a bit. Everything else regarding the editing song was pretty straightforward. So now I'm going to focus on the last two parts, which is the login and the registration, and I don't expect anything there. So I'm just directly going to skip the video until that's done. All right, as expected, there wasn't anything weird or strange when doing the registration and the login. And now let me show how does that look like. So here is the registration screen, and then if I click on this already got an account, I go to the login, and this is pretty straightforward. If I try to do anything, it is not gonna let me know unless I type something valid here, and I can also hide and see the password itself. And if I try to create an account, it goes to the main application, and then all the functionality as we saw before, it is working. Now, at this point, I have all the UI done in Compose, and now I only have the fragments for the navigation itself. So I have fragments where I'm actually doing the navigation between, and then those fragments are using composables inside. The next step would be migrating that navigation that we have now into Compose. So we have to introduce a composable where we are going to do our navigation and define our screens. And to be able to do the navigation in Compose, we have to get that dependency. We have to also include the serialization. And so that's something that I'll do next, and I'm gonna skip the video until that's done. Now, all the prerequisites to do the navigation in Compose is done, and I split it in several commits. You can see the history to see everything that I've done step by step. But in general, what I've done is in a TOML, I've introduced the Compose navigation and also the Kotlin X serialization. So basically those two things that I needed. I also had to enable the Kotlin serialization plugin. And once I had all the dependencies in place, I created navigation for each and every screen. And when I say I created navigation, let me show you what I mean by that. So I introduce a navigation file, and here is what does it look like. So it defines the destination itself. It also exposes two extension functions, one on the navgraph builder that defines the screen itself. So here we are actually having our domain specific screens instead of just having a composable, but everything it does is just wraps that composable that calls the actual composable screen. So this composable with that destination calls the composable screen. Additionally, I have an extension function on the nav controller to navigate to this screen, which actually wraps the navigate function. And that's basically how a navigation file looks like. And what is interesting here is when we have a navigation file that uses arguments. So here, for example, instead of data object, that is the case with this navigation here, here I have data class. It is important for them to be serializable so that the navigation library can serialize these destinations. And this one takes in song ID. So pay attention, song ID is the name of the property. And then I have created a constructor that takes in safe state handle that can unpack from the safe state handle that song ID that comes in. Now came the time when we are porting the old way of passing the arguments to this new way. Basically the way is the same. They are gonna come with the navigation itself automatically in the safe state handle in the view model. So from the view model, I can call song details destination and call this constructor by passing the safe state handle. And it will automatically create this new object of this song detail destination. It's gonna give me the song ID. That's something that is interesting here, but the rest is the same. So just a NavGraph Builder extension for defining the screen and Nav Controller extension to navigate to this screen that takes in the argument, and here it creates instance of this by passing that argument and navigates there. So it navigates, and when that screen is being opened, in this case this song detail screen, when navigated there, this view model is being injected, and when injected, it takes in the safe state handle, and ultimately from this safe state handle, I can create instance of this song details destination by passing the safe state handle. So that's something that will come as a step after when I actually do, when I actually finish all the navigation. But for now, I still use this old thingy because both are gonna work. I still have that plugin enabled, it still works, and the actual passing of the data across is still gonna work. When I do the compose navigation, as we're gonna take a look, then I'll have to migrate to this new way of getting the arguments. So that's about it, and there is no point to going through each and every, it's just these files that I have generated, nothing important. Ultimately, what's done here is this uproot, which is a composable that utilizes all those navigation files or navigation extension functions that we have created so far. And ultimately, it's just a very simple composable that wires up all the navigation together. So inside what we have is we have navigation controller, and then we have a nav host that takes in that nav controller. It says the start destination is going to be our registration destination. That's where we begin. And then it defines all the screens. So the registration screen, login screen, song overview screen, and these screens are basically the extension functions that we have defined on the NavGraph Builder. So when you actually take a look into this file, you will see approximately what are all the screens that this application has. Now for this app, we didn't need to have nested graphs, but that's something that I cover in another video. So if you need that, you can figure it out in that video. And that's it, basically. All these events, like what happens on registered when I have the registration screen. So on registered, I'm going to navigate somewhere else, which is the navigate to song overview. What happens when I have an account? On have an account, I navigate to login. What I'm trying to say here or pay attention to is this domain specific knowledge that we are having here. So we have registration screen, we have navigate to song overview. So those are domain specific things. We are not having like navigate and then call something, or composable and then call something inside. So this is really beautiful. And this is something that I've tried to port to navigation 3 in some of another projects when I was exploring navigation 3, which is still not done. But I ended up having very easy time making that migration, meaning that when you apply good principles, when you invest into good principles, as I did when I was building this project, you are going to end up migrating easier. This migration that I'm presenting in this video ended up very smoothly because I invested into good approaches back when I was building this application initially. All right, now that we have this uproot, all we need to do is use that inside our main activity. Okay, so here is our main activity. What I've done is I've commented everything that was inside on create, and I'm just calling set content, my app theme, and I'm calling my uproot. And it is just enough to have our application still functioning. Now that we have all the migration completed, we have to do a cleanup. We have to do a lot of cleanup, starting from changing the theme to actually remove the action bar so that we don't have to deal with the action bar itself. And when that's done, we also have to remove all the unused, all the unnecessary code, and all the resources that are no longer used, and also all the dependencies. Final step would be to update the UI tests so that they work also with Compose. So I'm gonna make sure to include all those commits, and then you can see and analyze those. And when all that work is done, you'll see the final result. All right, at this point, the work is done. The cleanup is complete. And as I promised, I've documented everything that I've done in the commits. So you can look in the history to see all the steps. And in particular, I have removed the action bar from the theme. I've removed the fragments and the fragment navigation. I removed obsolete dependencies. I've improved the screen transitions because by default, the screen transitions are not working the best in Compose. So I had to do that. I've migrated the UI tests to Compose as well. So now all the tests are working fine, and we're gonna see that in action just in a bit. Additionally, I've removed unused resources, dependencies, and I've also updated some of the dependencies that ended up being updated meanwhile. Now we're gonna start at the unit tests. I'm gonna run all of them so then we can see how they are working. Something important that I have to mention while we are at the UI tests is that I had to change some parts of the Compose UI to apply tags for testing so that I'll be able to locate those items or those nodes in the UI to make some assertions, and you will find that as well in the commits. You'll figure that out. Now, as we can see, the UI tests are running, and they're running pretty fast, which should confirm that the application or the important flows of the application are working as they are supposed to, so the application is fully operational again. Now the entire test suite has passed. We see here 33 tests completed, everything is working, and I'm also going to run the unit tests to make sure they are also working, and the result is that 133 tests passed successfully. That's also great. And finally, I'm going to launch the application and take a look at the end result. Now, maybe something that I have to do additionally, but that's not going to be part of this video, it's going to be out of the scope, is to enable edge-to-edge and make this application work on API 35 and up. But that's definitely content for another video. So here I'm gonna say ASD, create a user. I can log out. I can go to login, try to log in with ASD. In fact, add one more D, try to log in. We see this incorrect login credentials banner. So if I remove that and try to log in, it logs in. Now I can search here. That works too. I can open song details. I can edit the song. And I see right back all the editing. If I go back also, that's changed. And then I can also delete a song if I want to, which actually brings this prompt, and I have to click on the delete so that it gets deleted. And now we can confirm the song is no longer there. Now that's gonna be the wrap up. We saw all the important steps that we need to take whenever we are migrating for traditional view system to Compose. And as a general rule, whenever you are doing some migrations or refactoring, is to introduce something new, then change the clients from that old thing that they are using to the new thing, then remove the old thing. So try not to remove eagerly everything. Try to make the new thing work, then remove the old thing. And you will see that in all these commits that I've made, that I am using that approach a lot. And then the other lesson is to start always top to bottom, meaning that you start from the generic things, and then you start from the UI and then working downward. Now the question is, if we had multiple activities, what would be the approach? The approach would be completely the same. And then once we have all the activities complete, then we are gonna have that final migration as a final step that will be done last. So this is my step-by-step approach that I'm always taking whenever I have to port traditional Android views to Compose. And this is something that always ended up working for me. Hopefully this is helpful. I'll see you in the next video.